Good afternoon and welcome to the SILA Foundation's second webinar of March, Paws, Plans, and Peace of Mind, Pet Insurance Explained. My name is Julie Mendel and I'm the Education Trustee for the SILA Foundation. Before I introduce today's speaker, I have just a few housekeeping items. This webinar is about 1 hour in length and it is being recorded. Within the next week, you will receive a link to the recording and a post-webinar survey that we would really appreciate you completing. Please mute your microphone and turn off your video so the focus stays on our speaker. We ask that you put any questions you may have in the chat box. We will be monitoring and posing the questions to the speaker on your behalf. We will answer as many of the questions as we can in the time we have available. A little about today's presentation. Vet bills can be unpredictable. Pets can be even more so. This webinar cuts through the confusion around pet health and liability insurance and what's covered, what's not, and why skipping coverage can get expensive really fast. Learn how the right policies can help you protect your pet, your finances, and your sanity. Today's speaker is SILA's very own Barb Gavitt. Barb is the insurance lead and faculty vice president at Naughton Marks. She's been in the insurance education industry for 35 years and has experience teaching insurance and securities exam prep, writing content, and developing curriculum. She helped establish the SILA Education and Training Subgroup, known as SETS, and serves as the co-chair. She served on the SILA board from 2013 to 2021, including SILA president in 2020. She was elected back on the board for 2025 as the president-elect, and now she is once again the president of SILA. She has contributed to articles published in the U.S. News and World Report and Pet Priority. So please join me in welcoming Barb right back to our virtual webinar stage.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Julie. This is one of my favorite topics. So we are going to just jump right in. All right. So yeah, pet health insurance. Our agenda for today, we'll talk about types of pet health insurance plans, coverages and exclusions, a little bit about premiums, who can actually sell pet insurance, because there's lots of regulations, of course, around licensing and all that good stuff. And then we'll talk about pet liability coverage. There's a lot of confusion around pet health insurance versus pet liability. So I'll try to take some of that confusion away for you. All right. All right. So first of all, what is pet health insurance? Right? Well, the easy answer is it's the same thing as people health insurance, right? Only for your pets. So financial protection against unexpected major vet bills. So many people treat their animals as family members, as well we should. I know I do, with my dog. And we don't like it when they're sick or they're hurt. So we want, them to get the same kind of care or treatment that we do as individuals, right? But it costs money. Right. So pet health insurance is there to help defray those costs. Right. So this helps cover partial or total medical expenses due to sickness or injury. Right. So basically health insurance for your pet. Pet insurance is not new, right? We didn't start hearing a lot about it until, the late teens, 2000 teens. But the first policy was actually issued in the United States in 1982 by veterinary pet insurance companies, say that fast, over 40 years ago, right? So yeah, it's not new, but it has become a lot more popular since 1982. All right, so types of pets covered. For the most part, right, and most of what we're talking about today is to cover dogs and cats, right? So there are 7.03 million dogs and cats insured in 2024, right? This information is provided through the North American Pet Health Insurance Association, NAPIA. They will not release their 2025 data until April, so I don't have, the last year's data. But you can always go on their website and download it for free yourself. But it won't be out till April. All right, so dogs make up 75.6% of insured pets, and cats make up 23.5%. Cat sales are creeping up. Uh, little joke there. So yeah, yeah, as cat sales go up, dog sales go down. So it's definitely starting to get higher for cats. Uh, Most companies exclude exotic pets, right? Most do, but there are some that will. Things like birds, reptiles, amphibians, small mammals. You can get coverage, but not usually mainstream. And there are also some plans that cover horses. So those are available. It's not the majority of pet health insurance. So I don't want to say, yeah, you can't get covered on all these other animals, but we're just not going to talk about, all of the animals. We're just going to talk about dogs and cats. All right, so the first little bit of trivia, and I don't have a poll, so if you want to just throw your answers in the chat here. Which one was the first pet to be insured in the United States? What do you think? Just pop it in the chat. And if you sat through this webinar before, then you know the answer. Oh, well, not everybody does know. The answer is actually Lassie. All right. In 1982. So that would not be the black and white version of Lassie, because I certainly remember Lassie on TV in the 1960s, but it is not that Lassie. It is the Lassie from 1982, the colored version. It's probably the last time I've actually seen a collie dog, right? Collies used to be really popular when I was a kid, yeah, I haven't seen many collies around. There's so many more breeds. So anyway, that was just a fun little teaser to get us started. Okay, so let's talk about types of pet health insurance policies. And I actually got the board to send me photos of their pets. So the pets that you see in my photos are our friends on the SILA board. So we have Lucy and we have Breeze on this first slide. All right, so types of policies, there are accident-only insurance policies, accident and illness insurance. Then there is accident and illness insurance with wellness care, right? Those are the main types of policies. There are some endorsements. So wellness plans themselves can be sold separately as an endorsement. And also there can be a policy like for cancer, just like people have, humans have some supplemental policies that they can add. So do pet insurance plans, right? A standalone pet wellness plan is not pet health insurance, right? So if it's only marketed as wellness, right? Those are what we call prepayment plans, right? So basically you're prepaying for your care. So those are not actually considered insurance plans unless it is attached to the accident and illness plan or it can be added to a plan as an endorsement. Right. So they would cover things like, routine veterinary care, things that you would normally pay for on a regular basis, but you're just basically prepaying that up front. And usually those plans require that you use a specific veterinarian. All right, so let's dive a little deeper into this. All right, so I have this example is just so hilarious. All right, so I have a friend who has a cat, and this is a true story. Her cat's name is Thimble. All right. Thimble. And Thimble, actually, it's her daughter's cat. And Thimble swallowed a sewing needle. No joke. You can't make this stuff up. So Thimble swallowed a sewing needle, and you can see here on the x-ray where that sewing needle is. So Thimble's vet bill was $6,000 to remove that needle. And her daughter did have pet health insurance, right? It covered 90%, right? So it was removed using a magnet, and Thimble is doing just fine. But had they not had insurance, they would have had to pay the full $6,000. So that's just one success story. This is actually Cindy Davidson's her grand kitty, I guess you call it. All right, so pet health insurance accident coverage is exactly what you would think of, right? It covers injuries resulting from accidents. So one of the most common health accident pet health accident losses is due to ingestion of foreign objects. Animals are curious and they like to eat things, things that they are not supposed to eat. Um, I'll tell you a story about a dog that I had several years ago. Was a Jack Russell Terrier. His name was Milo. And somebody was supposed to be watching him while we were on vacation, and that was my father-in-law. And we came home from our vacation and we saw little piles of poop with shiny foil. And it turns out that Milo got into our chocolate kisses that I was saving for Easter and tore into that bag and ate that chocolate, foil and all. So that was quite a welcome surprise when we got home. And everything was fine. He was totally fine. Other injuries, broken bones, things like cuts. So pet accident coverage is recommended for pets that are relatively healthy, right? So we're not worried so much about their illnesses, but they have an active or mischievous lifestyle, such as Thimble, right? And I think, cats are a whole nother breed. So literally, right? So, all right. So that is our pet health insurance. Oh, I love the examples in the chat. Thanks. Yeah, yeah. It does, it costs a lot of money to have things removed from your pet, right? All right, so now we have to talk about some illness coverage, right? So illness coverage covers things like chronic conditions. So chronic conditions could be, these are ongoing conditions that require long-term treatment, right? So things like allergies, skin conditions, diabetes. Diabetes is a very common one, especially in cats. Obesity, cancer, and there are certain breeds that are more prone to, some of these illnesses as well. It also would cover, infections. It's very common for animals to get ear infections or eye infections. So, those would be considered illnesses covered under pet health insurance. Urinary tract infections, respiratory infections, all common things that we see pets um, having. Hereditary diseases, these are like abnormalities that are genetically transmitted from the parent and they could cause illness or disease, right? So something that is common that has gone through the family history. Diagnostic exams, things like x-rays, right? Surgery, medications, and some plans will also cover dental. So we're not talking wellness per se right now, just things that they need if they get, an infection in their mouth or something like that. All right, policy characteristics and provisions, right? So this is considered indemnity insurance. All right, pet health insurance is indemnity insurance, which means you have to pay upfront and will get reimbursed. All right, so it's a reimbursement plan. All right, so make sure that you have that credit card handy in case you have to pay, all of everything up front, but then get reimbursed. The waiting period for illness only is typically 10 to 30 days, right? So if you buy pet health insurance and within 10 days your dog becomes sick, chances are it is not going to be covered because it will still be considered pre-existing, right? So typically, and it's the same thing with human, health insurance, where you may have a time period in which something's not covered. Not so much for, policies under the ACA, but other policies. So typically there's a waiting period of 10 to 30 days to cover illnesses. These plans typically have deductibles, right? Similar to human health insurance, co-insurance or co-pays, which run usually 80 to 90%. And of course, they have annual limits. All right. So something to look at when you are buying pet health insurance is what might reduce those premiums, right? So longer waiting periods, higher deductibles, lower co-insurance, and higher annual limits can all reduce those premiums. We have Richard, these are Richard Tozer's dogs. Richard Tozer from Virginia, a regulator in Virginia, Dickens and Cole. The last slide was Nikki. All right, and here we have Sherry Coleman's dog, Willow. So cute. And Cody Henry. All right, so, oh no, I'm sorry, that's Ryan. All right, policy exclusions. So things that are not covered. pre-existing conditions are not going to be covered. Anything that there is a history that a dog has, had um, been treated for in the past, not going to be covered. Pregnancy and birth is not covered. There are also age limitations. So usually animals have to be at least 8 weeks old before they can be covered, right? So anything under 8 weeks, not covered. And then must be, no older than 10 to 12 years, right? So typically, pet health plans will exclude coverage for dogs that are older than 12 years. Not to say that you couldn't find a policy, it's going to be a lot more expensive. So another thing to think about is, yes, put your pet pictures in the chat. So another thing, to think about is to just like human insurance, get policies before they have pre-existing conditions, right? I mean, we know that there's certain conditions that pets are prone to, hereditary things, but the sooner you get coverage, the more you will have coverage for, right? We don't want to wait until our pets are sick or have a condition to go and get insurance because those things are typically not going to be covered, right? Wellness coverage in general is excluded, right? So like vaccinations and things like that, unless it is specifically included. So remember that can be added as an endorsement, but otherwise wellness is not going to be covered specifically. All right, let's take a look at our premium considerations. So what affects our premiums? A pet's breed is certainly going to have an effect on premiums and what their likelihood is of, becoming ill. All right. So some examples here. I mean, purebreds versus mixed. Purebreds actually have more conditions that are harder to fix than mixed breeds do, right? And, some dogs, of course, have predisposed conditions, right? Hip dysplasia is a common one in golden retrievers, right? So a mix is generally going to have a lower premium than a purebred. Age and gender also have an effect, right? Male dogs don't have babies, right? And how old they are, right? Geographic locations, right? Because there are state regulations that apply to pet health insurance plans that could affect their premiums and also the veterinary cost. So geographically located where, if you're in an area that has a higher cost of living and therefore the vet costs are higher, your premiums are going to be higher, right? Which is similar to almost all types of insurance plans. And there are also chronic conditions that can cause premiums to be higher. So this list right here that I have is a moving chart. I this slide probably took me like a week to finalize because every time I tried to find information on the animals that had the highest cost and the lowest cost, I would get different breeds, right? So I don't think that the pet health industry even agrees on which breeds have the highest cost or the lowest cost. So I ended up just settling on this one. So you may see some schedules that don't use these exact breeds, but I had to pick something, right? So Mastiffs have the highest cost. Those are big dogs, right? French and English bulldogs. I bet you can think why, because they have those, snouts. They probably have a lot of nasal conditions. Irish wolfhounds, again, very, very big dogs. Burmese mountain dogs and Great Danes, right? So those are all common higher cost premiums for dogs. Lower cost are Chihuahuas, the least Golden Doodles, Springer Spaniels, Shih Tzus, Maltese, Maltipoo, all the little poos, Yorkshire Terriers, right? So you almost can see that the smaller dogs might have lower costs than the bigger dogs, right? So these are examples. Now for cats, I had no idea. I don't have cats. I'm not necessarily a cat person. I'm more afraid. It's not that I don't like cats, but I did not realize there were this many cat breeds. So I was quite surprised. So the highest caught is called a Maine Coon. Then we have British Shorthair, Abyssinian, Bengal. I have a friend that has a Bengal cat, and exotic short hair. And then, of course, the lowest would be the mixed breed, domestic short hair, Siamese, a ragdoll, and a Sphynx. So yeah, I went off in a rabbit hole, looking up all of these cats because I just had no idea that there were that many breeds. Sorry, just trying to look at the chat to see. All right. Now, also affecting your premium is how many pets you have covered. All right, so I have a friend who built a catio, like a patio only for cats, right? And this friend has many cats. Peach, Stella, Tiny, Stuart, and Fizzy are their cats. And so here they are in their catio. So the more pets you have, the lower per pet the premium is going to be, right? Just like if you have a multi-car discount, right? Your premiums are going to be a little bit lower. So anyway, I thought this was a cute picture to show you. I think if you have one cat, you're just going to be open to having 10, right? It's either one or 10. I'm not sure if there's any in between. All right, so there are some additional benefits available. And my favorite slide, because my puppy is on here, Riley, she's not a puppy, she's actually 10 years old, but she's my sweetie. So, emergency vet treatment when traveling out of the country, right? So, these are add-ons. These are things, yes, I agree, Candace, all dogs are puppies, right? So, these are add-ons that you can purchase for an additional premium. Yeah, emergency vet treatment when traveling out of the country. The cost of advertising and the reward offered for a lost or stolen pet. I mean, this is fascinating stuff, right? The cost of pet care if the pet parent is hospitalized. All right. So this isn't the pet being hospitalized. This is the pet parent, right? So if we have a cat lady who ends up in the hospital and her animals have to be boarded, right? This would pay for that cost of the pet care. And trip cancellation reimbursement if a pet needs emergency surgery, right? So you are scheduled to go out of town on a European holiday and your dog needs emergency surgery or your cat needs emergency surgery. You have to cancel your trip so you can buy coverage to pay that trip cancellation fee. So, Dana, is the care for treatment if a pet parent is hospitalized? Is that only while traveling or anytime? No, this is not just for traveling, right? The pet parent one is just if they're hospitalized. That's not a travel thing. All right, I absolutely love when I see these on Facebook or on the internet where they're dogs that got into trouble and they have signs. Mom found a sock hanging out of my butt tonight. Now I'm in trouble. She wanted everyone to know that I'm not always so cute. So, yes, dogs can eat socks. I thought this was cute to have a cat vomit little sign, right? Dog shaming calendar. Oh, I didn't even know there was such a thing. I'm going to have to look into that. And then here's a couple naughty pups. We chewed a hole in the carpet right before our parents were scheduled to move out. Yeah, those pet parents are not going to be super happy about that. Anyway, those are so cute. Here's one. Mom left her contact case uncovered for 5 minutes, and I lapped up all the solution and ate one of the lenses. I don't think that they are going to use a magnet to get that lens out. I think they're going to have to wait for that to come out the other end. And then we have this cat made my owner spend $500 at the emergency vet because I got so hydrated from refusing to eat my wet food. It turns out I have expensive taste and need the gravy. And then here we have a dog that just inhaled an entire pan of lasagna. I have two stories from two of our colleagues. Ryan Fitzgerald, who's on the board, told me a story about his dog who faked an injury, right? So they took the dog, they thought their dog had an ACL injury and took their dog to the vet and they did all of the tests, all the x-rays, and the the vet came back and said, I I think your dog is faking it. And the dog actually changed which way it was limping. I mean, that is so hilarious. And then we have Nikki, one of her dogs had GI issues and took it to the vet. That was $390. And basically, her dog just needed to have a big fart. So those are things that could be expensive, but we just never know, what's going on with our pets. And of course, we want to make sure that they're happy and healthy. All right, regulatory requirements. Of course, it wouldn't be a SILA webinar without talking about regulations, right? Product training and licensing qualifications. So in 2022, the NAIC, National Association of Insurance Commissioners, adopted the Pet Insurance Model Act. All right, so this has some standards, right? So policy requirements and conditions, they consider pets to be property, right? So the purpose of this act is to create a legal framework, right, for states to adopt, so they don't have to come up with their own regulations. All right. So state laws apply to pet insurance policies issued to any residents in their state. So property insurance, your pets are considered your property, right? So most states do require some sort of a property license, and we'll take a look at the various states in just a minute. The Pet Model Act also requires specific definitions to be used. So definitions such as what is a chronic condition, right? What is a congenital disorder? What is a hereditary disorder? So that way, state by state, there are some things that are continuous throughout the states, right? There must be disclosures, right? Specific exclusions or limitations, waiting periods, deductibles, coinsurance, policy, annual or lifetime limits. The free look period means that the pet owner has the right to return the policy for a specified number of days for any reason and get a full refund of their premium. So typically 15 days to 30 days is a common free look period. Waiting periods. All right. So talked about this already a little bit, but the waiting period cannot exceed 30 days, and that would be for pre-existing conditions. Right? So that's a pretty common one. And then wellness programs. So again, this has to be defined as a subscription or reimbursement program separate from an insurance policy that provides goods and services to promote the general health, safety, and well-being of a pet. Right? So the insurer or producer cannot market a wellness program as pet insurance, right? It can be sold as part of the policy. So in that case, the cost must be separate and identifiable, but wellness programs themselves, like I mentioned earlier, are not actually considered pet insurance. All right, so key parts to the Model Act include insurance producer training, right? So a producer may not transact pet insurance or sell pet insurance unless or until they are licensed and have completed the required training. Right? The insurer must ensure that producers have been trained on the coverages and conditions of its pet insurance products. So this training is separate from the licensing portion, that a producer needs to get. So there's a specific license that a producer needs, but in addition to that, they must also meet insurance producer training, right? And it is the insurer or the company that must monitor and make sure that they have that specific coverage or that specific training. The training must include information on pre-existing conditions and waiting periods to make sure that they know what they're talking about, the difference between pet insurance and non-insurance wellness programs, hereditary disorders, congenital anomalies, and chronic conditions, and things like rating, underwriting, renewal, and other administrative topics, right? Things that will affect premiums, all that good stuff. Because, they're selling a policy just like if it were health insurance to humans. So they have to be familiar with their company's products and be able to clearly identify the parts of the policy. So this is an overview of licensing qualifications and why should pet insurance be any different than any other type of license? So it is not uniform, of course. So there are two states. Now, actually, I jumped the gun a little bit because I updated this based on New Jersey that did just pass a law, but it doesn't become effective until 2027. But I actually just still included it on here. Technically, New Jersey has a limited line requirement, but it will have a full line. There are 9 states that only require property casualty, 21 states you have to have a property only license, 8 states a casualty only license. 2 states are property casualty or personal lines. 1 state property or personal lines. 2 states property or limited lines. 1 state PC or limited lines. 1 state PC personal lines or limited lines. 2 states any major line, and then 2 states which would include personal lines, and then 2 states that doesn't include personal lines. And then to date, there's 1 state that requires specific pet insurance CE for their pet insurance license. Now, Wyoming does also have some, or sorry, Montana also does have a requirement, but basically just stating that they have to do CE for their license, right? So it isn't specific to continuing ed or for pet insurance. All right, so to date, 13 states have adopted the Pet Insurance Model Act. And this act did not address licensing qualifications, which is why on that last slide you saw that it is all over the place, right? So it's up to each state. So I have my favorite question. Does SILA have a chart on this? SILA has a chart for this, absolutely. So yes, definitely you can go search the charts and you can find the pet insurance chart, absolutely. All right, all states require a license, whether it's limited lines or major lines, you have to have some license. All right, so this just goes a little bit more specific with which states require what. All right, I'm not going to read through all of this. The recording will be available to you as well. But since all of this is in the SILA chart, you can go ahead and go to the chart and take a look for yourself. And again, I did include New Jersey on here, but it doesn't actually become effective. But they did pass the law. So you've got that. All right. In 2026, there are some trends. Pet insurance is trending, right? So new regulations and transparency. There are new state laws that require insurers to provide clear, standardized definition of terms like pre-existing conditions and waiting periods. So each year, more states are adopting the Model Act, right? And they are requiring clarity for their policy owners. AI powered claims, and why not? Right? Since all insurance companies are using AI these days, right? So providers are using AI, including natural language processing and image recognition, to significantly speed up claims processing and reimbursement times. Because remember, you're paying for this up front and you quickly want to get reimbursed. Customization and power-ups. So plans are more modular, allowing owners to add specific coverage for alternative treatments, behavioral therapy, boarding fees for hospitalized owners, right? Or lost pet advertising. So those were a couple of the things that I talked about earlier. Increased use of telemedicine, right? Approximately 30% of policies now include or integrate virtual vet consultations as part of their standard coverage. Market expansion. New players are entering the market, offering widespread competitive accident and illness coverage. Yeah, so as more insurers, jump on the bandwagon, then that makes the premiums a more competitive industry. But costs are rising, right? So due to inflation and advanced veterinary care, premiums are rising, though high deductible plans can keep monthly costs lower, right? So those are the things that are trending in 2026. And there are some coverage options trending as well, which comprehensive wellness add-ons. These are popular endorsements that offer routine care, dental cleanings, vaccines, and flea and tick prevention. Chronic condition coverage. So these will cover specific conditions. So they would be listed by name. So coverage that specifically covers long-term care for conditions like diabetes or allergies, provided they are not pre-existing. And this is a new one, end-of-life care. So increased options are covering things like euthanasia, cremation, or burial services, right? So those are some newer coverage options that we are seeing in 2026. So I wanted to make sure to include in this presentation what the difference is between pet health insurance and pet liability coverage. They are two completely different things, right? So people may think because they have pet health insurance that this is also going to cover any damage that their pet causes. And that is not the case, right? So this is different coverage that you would have to purchase, right? So pet liability coverage is it's third party insurance. So it's going to cover if something happens to somebody else, right? It does not cover anything if it happens to the pet owner, though. All right, so we're going to start off talking about dog bites because that's probably the most common claim that we see in under liability. So there are 85 million dogs in the United States, right? In 2025, there were 4.5 million dog bites, 800,000. Yeah, Dana, I'll talk about that in just a minute. Yes. 800,000 injured people needed medical attention. There were 50 recorded dog bite deaths. Recorded. Okay. So, not all dog bites aren't reported, right? But, dog deaths are pretty accurate. There were 22,658 claims in the United States, and the average cost was $58,545 per claim. Per claim. All right. So strict and absolute liability. So the owner of a dangerous animal becomes strictly liable for all injuries and damages caused by those animals, right? This assigns responsibility for damages even if the responsible party was not at fault or negligent, right? However, it may be reduced if the dog was provoked or the victim was trespassing, right? So there are some things that may reduce the amount of the claim. So, who can tell me an occupation other than vets and technicians with the highest incident of dog attacks with 6,088 last year? Yes, it seems like it wouldn't really be true, but it is. It's mail carriers, right? Absolutely. Maybe Amazon carriers are included in that. I don't know, but yes. All right. So here are some definitions. Now, I actually pulled this. These are definitions specifically required in California, right? But other states may also have similar things where they define the difference between a dangerous animal and a vicious animal, right? So a dangerous dog has aggressive behavior on at least two occasions in 3 years. They've bitten someone without being provoked, causing minor injuries. They've injured or killed a domestic animal at least twice in the past 3 years. All right, so that is what defines a dangerous animal. And then a vicious dog is aggressively injured or killed someone without being revoked, killed, or the court previously deemed it potentially dangerous and the dog owner did not meet the legal requirements, or the dog acted dangerously again. All right, so these are specific things that are defined by state law. So that also can determine whether your pet can even get insurance, or the liability may be on whichever plan you have may exclude coverage for your pet. All right, so how can you get pet insurance, right? How can you get it? Or I'm sorry, liability insurance, right? So one of the most common is through your homeowner's policy or your renter's policy, right? So you have liability coverage on these policies, right? So under your homeowner's plan, dog bites may be covered under the personal liability section of a homeowner's policy. So it may coverage provided on the premises, and may be excluded off the premises, right? So that would be somebody coming into your yard. But there are some plans that might not cover it if you're walking your dog at the park and then they bite someone. It may exclude specific breeds. However, Connecticut, Georgia, Illinois, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Virginia do not allow it unless there's a documented history of biting. Provides physical injury, property damage, and legal problems up to the liability limit. and pet liability limit may be lower than the general policy liability limit, right? So if you have an overall $100,000 liability limit on your homeowners, the pet liability might only be for 50,000 or 75,000, right? Also, renter's insurance may have liability coverage. And then you could also buy a separate personal umbrella liability policy, which can cover above and beyond your homeowners or your renters, right? So that could increase your cap or your limit. Now, I thought this was interesting, right? So there are dog breeds that are generally not covered under most homeowner policies with a canine liability exclusion endorsement, right? So these are the specific examples of dogs that may not be covered. Doberman Pinschers, German Shepherds, Akita, Chow, Great Dane. Now, I certainly never thought that Marmaduke was a vicious animal, but who knew? Pit bulls, Rottweilers, Siberian or Alaskan Huskies, and Staffordshire Terriers, right? So apparently they are considered animals that they may be excluded from coverage. All right. Animal liability insurance. So there is specific animal liability coverage that can be purchased. Yeah. So specialized coverage. Third-party bodily injury and property damage, right? It does not cover loss to the insured or members of the household, right? So now you're buying specific liability coverage on your animal. This is not part of your homeowners, right? It would not cover expenses if an animal is impounded, right? So any boarding or vaccinations would not be covered. Legal defense. Standalone policies provide legal defense and damages awarded in a lawsuit. These may be issued for specified breeds, such as the ones that we just talked about that are excluded from coverage. And exotic pet liability insurance, if it's legal to own an exotic pet. So if a venomous snake from Australia is not legal, then you would not be able to get exotic pet liability insurance on that pet, right? So as long as it is legal to own. Now, this really fascinated me also. So there's coverage up to the policy limit for working dogs. So guard dogs, service dogs or animals, therapy dogs, emotional support dogs, bomb sniffers, narcotic bomb sniffers, breeds excluded from coverage on a homeowner's policy, and dogs with a bite history, right? So some of these animals have additional exposure, so there may be limits for those. But again, you may be able to get additional coverage if you have, especially like the narcotic bomb sniffer dogs, right? They may have specific coverage that they can get because they have a hazardous occupation. Cats are not innocent and they are sneakier. So there are still some claims, cat liability claims, right? So examples of cat liability claims include property damage, right? So if a cat damages a rental property, they ruin flooring, they shred curtains, or broken furniture, resulting in liability claims. So these are the most common liability claims for cats. Third party injury. A cat bites or severely scratches a visitor or neighbor, resulting in medical bill liability. So it isn't so much the pain or the bite itself, but what tends to happen is that it gets infected. And there have been some serious bites from a cat that have caused people to lose limbs. So that is a serious thing. Damage to third party property. A cat causes damage to a neighbor's home or belongings because cats don't have boundaries, right? Accidents caused by feline behavior. All right. So a cat causes a car accident by distracting a driver. Sorry, that's just hilarious. So anyway, these are common cat liability claims. All right, so that ends our portion on pet health insurance and pet liability insurance. Are there any questions I can answer for you? Julie, did anything pop up?
I'm not seeing anything
I
other
tried
than
to answer if I saw
how
them.
unfair it is that they get labels when it's not their fault. Seeing that. But no, I'm not really not seeing any questions.
So I do love, so thank you, Steve, for piping in and saying that Arizona is on that list as well. I'm assuming you're talking about where they don't allow certain pets to be excluded from coverage. I believe that's probably what you mean. Yeah, Amazon delivery mailman. Okay, awesome. Yeah, any other questions that I can help with you?
You
There's
did
so
just get
much.
a question. Is the pet insurance included automatically in homeowners or is it a rider?
Homeowners, you automatically have liability on your animals under your homeowners. So the policy may already specify the limits, so you don't have to add an endorsement.
Okay, we're getting a couple other questions in here as
Yeah, and you
well.
might have to increase your limits, right? I mean, that's the thing is that it would just fall under whatever your limits are. But if you need more coverage, you may have to buy an umbrella policy or increase your limits, right? Depending on what kind of animal you have. And then what kind of pet insurance is used for jobs like modeling. So this is a little different. All right. So when you have a pet who is actually working for a living per se by being modeled, like all of those pets that were on my first slide, Lassie and Morris the cat, they are actually covered under surplus lines policies, right? So it's similar to like Taylor Swift insuring her legs, right? So there are policies like that that can cover if your animal is injured and it's more to replace like the income. So that's a whole separate policy. Otherwise, it would be just whether they get injured or are sick. So I know that Hawaii had legislation in process, so we'll have to double check that on the SILA chart. Yeah, there are insurers that will cover pre-existing conditions if it is a condition that has not occurred in a period of time. Yep. Yeah, this is not a catch-all to all policies, right? Just more what's common. Are there any emerging coverages or regulations that will impact licensing? I don't think so, Monica. The licensing has pretty much been left to each state. So, and since pet insurance is not one of the main core lines of authority, it's really up to the state to decide. I don't see this as anything that's going to become uniform. Is it worth it to get insurance for a dog that is 8.5 years old if they're healthy? If you can find a policy that will cover them, and they may only cover them up to a certain age as well. And the premiums are probably going to be pretty expensive. If your dog is relatively healthy, then you could probably just get an accident policy to just cover them for accidents. All right, I'm not seeing anything else. You guys?
Well, it looks like that's everything. So
Awesome.
thank you so much for sharing your expertise on this. This is always such a fun webinar for everybody. I love that you're such a good friend to SILA and the SILA Foundation. We really do appreciate you and your time. As a reminder for everybody else, our webinars are free of charge and open to the public, and we love it when you share our invitations. We want you to watch for and complete the post-webinar survey and plan on joining us next month for a discussion on artificial intelligence.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.